What's going on? We're going to be talking about anti-magic today. So what really is anti-magic? It's exactly what it sounds like, for real. Anti-magic is the ability to erase and delete magic. The only two people to have it are Asta and the anti-magic devil himself. Now, primarily, anti-magic is used by Asta via the swords within Link's old grimoire. Each sword uses anti-magic in a different way, but some of them share ways to use them. Now, in the manga, the anti-magic devil does use anti-magic, but he only uses it just by levitating the swords. He's pretty much an uncreative bum. But besides all that, let's talk about how Asta himself uses anti-magic. Now, when Asta needs to use anti-magic, he uses anti-magic swords when he fights. And like I said earlier, they all have unique abilities per sword, but they all share the ability to cut magic with the sharp side, and they can all fly back to Asta, at least in the manga, when he says their name. Now, I say sharp side, but really any weapon that has anti-magic in it becomes rusty as hell for whatever reason. We don't know why, but that's just what it does. But let's get into their own unique sword abilities. Let's start off with Asta's first sword, the Demon Slayer sword. It's a big ass sword that can cut magic with its sharp side and smack magic back or away from Asta with the flat side. Asta can also coat the entire thing with more anti-magic to use a technique called Anti-Magic Demon Slayer Sword Black Divider, where the sword gets way bigger via anti-magic without making it any heavier. Mind you, this is a heavy sword. Any person hit with this is hit with a lot of blunt damage since they can't really get cut by it. In the manga, by the way, he can also fly in it, kind of like a surfboard, but that's really all he has to do with the Demon Slayer sword. Now let's move on to the Demon Dweller sword. The Demon Dweller sword. This sword can actually take allied magic and slash it out, which can be really useful in a battle where he needs more range. Now mind you, Asta has no magic, so when he does take allied magic, it's the attribute that he's slashing out. So if he has a water person helping him out, he's going to slash out water magic, simple as that. Now, in the manga, he can also do the same exact thing, but with anti-magic. This is called Black Slash, where he can cut through spells and seemingly hit people with blunt force, hard enough to even smash them through ceilings, made out of complete stone. Now let's move on to the last sword that he gets in the anime, at least, the Demon Destroyer sword. Now, the Demon Destroyer sword probably has the most unique ability out of all of his swords, since it can straight up remove the cause and effect relationships from spells. But basically, it just removes the effects of spells. So if somebody's poisoned, then he can get rid of the poison off of them and the effects of the poison. Kind of like a heal, but he's not really healing them. It was so powerful that it came in clutch during the elf arc. It literally removed all of the elf souls from the human bodies. But besides that, it can cut through magic like the other swords and doesn't really have any super special effects. But Asta might use the sword a bit more in the future. We don't know, only time will tell. But let's move on to the next sword. But for you anime onlys, I do recommend skipping. Now, this section will have heavy manga spoilers, so I do recommend just skipping over to the black part. But if you don't care, or if you do read the manga and you just want a little review about what this sword does, then go ahead and stick around. But without further ado, let's get into the final sword that Asta currently has, which is Yami's katana. Now, this sword doesn't have any known special abilities, but it does seem to be extremely sharp since it managed to cut through Dante in his 88% enhanced devil form. Within one slash, by the way. One slash. Mind you, Yami couldn't even do that with the death thrust, and he literally almost died fighting him and needed the help of Asta just to be able to beat Dante. So that says something about this sword when it has anti-magic on it. But besides that, it's just another rusty sword with no anti-magic, as described by Libe. It might have special abilities that we may find out in the future, but at the moment it doesn't have anything. Well, let's get some black form now. Now, out of all the abilities that Asta gains with anti-magic, this is probably my favorite one. If not, just most definitely my favorite one. And it's called the black form. Now, before I actually explain what the black form is and what it does, I do have to explain how Asta has it and how Asta can constantly re-achieve it. So, anti-magic constantly flows within the anti-magic swords, no duh. But when Asta wants to, later on, he can take some of that flowing anti-magic and force it into his body, which gives him the black form. Now, originally he couldn't do this at first, and the Witch Queen actually had to unlock the limits of anti-magic flowing within his body, since his body used to unconsciously just shut off the power going into it. But now that I've explained this, I can explain how Asta can use its abilities. Also later on, he just reactivates it constantly by using Ki, which I'll explain that in another video. Besides the half-demon-esque appearance, this form does give Asta access to some pretty busted abilities. First of all, his mind becomes much more clear and his body seems to become much more physically stronger as he went from not even be able to beat spirit enhanced Ladros to one-shotting him completely. That does show the difference in strength that he has when he achieves this form versus when he doesn't have the form. Not only that, he has the ability to seek strong mana, which seemingly gives him flight, but he kinda can fly on his own, but if he has too much anti-magic in him, then he'll straight up just attack somebody, or if somebody has a strong enough mana, then he'll just fly over to them, kinda like a moth to a light. This form also does give Asta some pretty good defensive buffs, since he can soften the blows of magic and mana that may hit him, and he can even slowly erode the magic that's nearby him when he has enough anti-magic flowing within him. And although I did say I'm not going to talk about noticeable changes, when he used the Black Divider for the first time, he did gain a second horn right on top of where he got his first horn. Initially, this form did come with a couple weaknesses. First of all, he could only use it around twice a day since it made his body hurt like crazy from at least when he explained it. Secondly, he needed time to put anti-magic into his body or he just wouldn't transform in time. Although it does seem that after the elf arc where he's broke his limits multiple times, that he's gained some kind of mastery over this form since he's able to tap into it much faster, like when he saved Mari from the magic parliament because they were about to kill her. But besides that, I'm going to be talking about some notable abilities that Asta uses when he's in this form. First of all, Black Meteorite. This is an ability where Asta homes in on an opponent and slashes them, which can be pretty lethal, since when anti-magic is concentrated like when he uses the Black Divider, it is shown to be incredibly sharp, like when he slices down the entire Spade Fortress with one slash in chapter 230. The next ability that Asta uses is Black Hurricane, where he spins around like a Beyblade, deleting all magic in his path. But that's about it about like unique abilities that he uses in this form. Now the next section is going to be complete manga spoilers, not even just lighter stuff or feats, but complete spoilers. So I do recommend just clicking off or just going to the end of the video if you want to see that. But yeah, for you anime onlys, peace out. Now the next form that Asta gets is Rage Asta. After seeing Gauche impaled by Dante, Asta is sent into a rage where anti-magic covers his body a lot more, and he gets some noticeable changes like a tail, an extra horn, and he's kind of foaming from the mouth. But besides all of that, let's talk about the abilities of this form. The first notable ability that's shown in this form is the anti-magic whips that Asta uses with the Demon Slayer sword. These whips are strong enough to completely erase the spell that Dante used to keep the Black Bulls within the air. Asta also used the Demon Dweller in this state, which allowed him to do a much more chaotic version of the Black Slash. Asta's Black Hurricane in this state was also strong enough to completely negate all of the swords that Dante was throwing at him, and was even strong enough to cut him in this state. Now in chapter 258, after trading his right arm for more power, he gets a pretty cool looking arm that's way more powerful than any other form that Asta gets. The anti-magic that's condensed in this form is so powerful that it was the thing in the first place that allowed him to one-shot Dante. Now, he can only sustain this form for about 50 seconds, and he seemed to be extremely exhausted after using it, but the power boost is definitely way worth it. Now, further in the manga, anti-magic might change how it's used. This video could be outdated by like next week, but as of right now, these are all the current things with anti-magic. Hope you guys liked the video, and I'm gonna see you next time. Next video is going to be Grimoires Explained. Peace out.